second of this series of student talks for UK. We will probably have a third talk on video editing coming up soon. So today we are going to hear about composition photography and how to tell stories through photography from online. Over.
Thank you for coming. Am I audible to everyone? So, the title of the talk. That's probably a bit not so general term, in the sense that, well, people use more technical terms and more, photography terms. But I personally felt that this is something maybe it's worth discussing. Storytelling, how you tell stories through photography. So whatever art form you are practicing, it's generally you have to tell a story. So photography is painting with light. When you're painting on a canvas, you have brushes and colors and everything. Here you can say the brush is your camera and the colors, it's light. You're just using light to paint something that you are seeing and you want to convey. A story, an art. So painting what? In my opinion, a story. You have to paint a story through any sort of art form, whatever it is, and well, we'll focus on photography. So what are the main elements of photography? It's first of all composition, and second is exposure. So composition is, say I can take a photo of this room in different ways, and I can compose it in different ways. I can place that stand at the middle of my photo, at the side, or whatever. There are many rules for composition which you can go through. The rule of third, the leading line, golden spiral, and all those rules are there. It's worth looking at them, and because you need to, if you have a theoretical knowledge, it will be helpful to you to apply them, and not only to apply them, but also to break those rules. So, but in my talk, I'm not going to talk about rules much. I'm more going to focus on. So there are two sides of photography. Like two sides of your mind must act together. The one is technical, and the other is aesthetic. So technical means, say, how you are managing the shutter speed, the ISO, the aperture and everything. All these things how you are managing. That's the technical side. It's very important. You must know your camera. You must know your. So a same photo would be very different in different shutter speeds and different apertures. And the second side is the aesthetic side. So for a technical side, you may have a book, you may have a cheat sheet, and a lot of stuff. But aesthetic side, I don't think so. You cannot have a book about the aesthetic side of photography. You have to develop it on your own, and everybody has different point of view. Every photographer has different point of view about aesthetics. But yes, composition and exposure. You have to look at both of them. How you compose a photo and what sort of exposure you get. So exposure, you can manage the exposure using the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed. So what sort of exposure you want and what composition you want. You have to think about both of them from the perspective of technicality and from the perspective of aesthetics. So what is storytelling in photography? Say you are going to a place, you are going to a forest, or say you are going to the mountains and you want to take a photo of one of the wildlife there, or say a person, a human being, an emotion, or whatever. There's always a story. The story might be very subtle, the story might be very poignant, the story might be very stark. But you have to convey that story to the viewer. And that is something very, very important, because if you want to transport what you are seeing here to the viewer who has never seen that place, or has never been to the place at the exact time and moment you have been there, it is very difficult to convey that message to that viewer. And that is something we need to learn about storytelling. So you might see story in anything, but you have to think how and which of the stories will be conveyed to the viewer. Yes, this is something very important. You need to understand how the camera sees and how your eyes see. Your eyes see in a very different way than the cameras, because your eyes have much better resolution. You can see more colors, and you can see, your viewing angle is more. So you have a lot of advantages when you're seeing with your eyes. And not only that, one very important aspect is when you're looking at a flower. There's not only the flower. There are smells. There's an environment. Maybe you have some memories with that flower. All of those things are coming to your mind when you're seeing that flower, but the camera is not getting all of those things. So the camera is only seeing what you are seeing by your eyes, and not only by your eyes, but in a much worse way, to be frank. So one thing that people have been using for a long time is frame your photo with this. Look through this frame and see how your photo looks. That's something it's been used a lot. So yeah, you have to learn how to differentiate between your eyes and the camera. And how to learn. One is you have to regularly see and analyze good photographs taken by renowned photographers. If you want names, I'll give it to you at the top. You can ask me personally, I'll tell you a lot of names. And don't stop taking photography. Don't stop doing photography. Because some photo that I took, say 5, 6, 7 years back, 8 years back, I now understand it was completely nonsense. But even if I didn't take that photo, I wouldn't have been in a position to understand that was nonsense. So it's a gradual process, it's a continuous process. You have to keep taking photographs. You have to slowly develop your own style. That is very important, because I'll show you some photos where you'll understand that style makes a hell lot of difference. And say if you have a human being, say in front of a monastery in the hills, and say a renowned photographer, Steve McCurry, goes and takes a photo of that person, or if Joe McNeil takes a photo, another renowned photographer, both will take it in very different ways. They will convey different stories of the same person at the same place at the same point of time, because they see things differently. They have their own perspectives and they have their own storytelling methods. So you have to develop your own style, but you cannot create your own color gamut without looking at others' color gamuts, how they paint, how they have been using the light and the camera. So, and the most important thing is, and yes, don't be hesitant to change your style, to change, yeah. Don't be hesitant to change, and always listen to constructive criticisms. That's very important. And the last and the most important is, don't stop learning. Even if you are 50, 60 or whatever, every photographer, every artist continuously changes, continuously learns, and that's the most important thing you need to understand. So wildlife photography. Wildlife photography is something very interesting. A lot of people think if you have a very good camera and a big lens, those large lenses, you can go to the forest and take wildlife photographs. That's not really the case, because wildlife photography is primarily about capturing the moment, a flickering moment, which may go away in like a fraction of seconds. So again, I'll show you photographs about what I'm actually talking about. But those moments, those emotions, well, most of the animals and birds, they don't have that high level of emotion, but we humans can perceive emotion, which they don't have, but we can perceive that. So those moments and those flickering moments you have to capture, and that requires a lot of technical power also, because you have to know so you have to predict, you have to continuously predict where the bird can go, what the bird can do, will it come out, and what should be the shutter speed, what will be the wing speed, and all those things. Those technical sides, you have to have a grasp on. And with wildlife, it's also about you can capture the actions, the emotions. A portrait of a wildlife, I'll show you one, and landscapes using wildlife. That's very interesting. whatever you find creative, you can do it. And one thing we use in wildlife photography a lot is a short code with C, S-E-A. C, S means, so A means action, E means I, and S means story. So these three things, so every wildlife photography should have at least one of these three, either story or I or action. Well, story sort of encompasses all these, but well, story might be in different ways also, which doesn't have I, or like I is not very vibrant there, or the A is not beside. There was a photo I looked at it long back. I forgot the name of the photographer. It was taken in the Arctic. It was of those that bird. I forgot. Oh, probably it was penguin. Probably, yeah. That photo had no eye at all. It was covered, but still it conveyed an emotion, a story. And yes, in wildlife photography, composition plays a very crucial role. So again, rule of thirds, leading lines, and everything. So say this photograph here. This bird, if say these two birds were not here, I would have kept this bird at perfectly 1/3 at the left. Because why? Because the bird is flying to this side, okay. So I need to keep some breathing space on this side for the viewer to understand what is happening. But in this case, I haven't kept the bird at perfectly 1/3. Like in the other case, I would have kept the eye of the bird at perfectly 1/3. But here I have not. Because these two birds are there. They are adding to the story. So two birds are sitting and one is flying away. That is a story that you are trying to convey. So in this case, you have to change the composition. Now, is there any rule book what you should do for every case? No. You have to develop your own ideas and own thought process. If it was a videography, probably the composition would have been very different. Videography, we use a lot of center frame composition. But here, more 1/3 is much better. So yeah, that's something. Composition is literally the key, and also some might think that light is something very secluded, a secluded element from composition. Exposure is a very secluded element, but not really. Light is an integral part of composition. You can compose with lights, you can create the subject with lights. That's like very much possible. In travel photography, again, you are trying to capture some traditions or cultures or say landmarks, humans, emotions, whatever. But again, you have to tell a story. So in this photo, in this photo, see this line that is coming, this white line, it's a common mistake to end it at the corner of the photo. But that is something very wrong. Because when you are ending it at the corner of the photo, the general perception is that it's ending. But in photographs, you generally don't want something to end. You want the viewer to keep on thinking. And that is why this line, you have to end it at one side, either on this side or on this side. It's generally the rule. And yeah, these trucks and these things are very important. So again, these two people, they are not at the perfect center, because that will just kill the image. And this girl, she is looking at right, so I need to keep space on right. And this truck is a very important element in the photo. This truck, these lines, because what happens when the viewer looks at the subject, goes to the other parts, the viewer has to come back to the subject. And these elements are sort of reflecting the viewer's eyes to the subject. Yes. So while composing, you need to keep in mind the two most important things are subject and the environment. Without subject, there is no photography at all. Photography has no meaning without subject. And when you are creating a subject or getting a subject in photography, the biggest challenge is, if it is a subject to you, is it also a subject to the viewer? You have to keep that in mind. Because, again, the viewer is not seeing what you are seeing at the exact moment. So the subject is, even a whole photograph can be subject. Landscape photographers do that a lot. Their whole photograph is a subject, but in that case light becomes extremely crucial. That's why landscape photographers generally don't take any photo at 12 o'clock at noon. So because the light is very flat and there's no contrast, there's no shadow. So it's nonsense sort of. And the sky, like light coming through cloudy skies, that's a great time for taking landscape photography, because then you're creating the subject, a mood of the photo. And the environment. So if you're taking the photo of a human being, it is possible that environment means it's not that always you have to keep an environment, but you have to understand when you should keep an environment and how much of environment you should keep. So if I take a photo of say him in this classroom, and I can take it different ways. I can focus on his face. That will be a very close crop candid. I can take much more, but I have to, if I want him to be the subject, I have to stop at a certain point, because if I take too many of the things in the environment, it will become a clutter, and when it will become a clutter, the eye of the viewer will continuously bounce between different objects, and it will make the photograph lose its essence and its appeal. So we'll go through a few photographs. I'll go through some mobile photos first, then I'll go to the camera photos. This was actually taken long back. So yeah, in this photo, this one, the vertical composition is very important for the photo, because see this line. This line is like one of the most important parts, and this human being is very important. It's what we call complementing. He's actually complementing the position of the sea here. So this, sorry, any problem? So this person is complementing, and yeah, again from a very different perspective. There's a horizontal composition. You can see two photos. I'm conveying different emotions. Very much. Just because I changed the composition. That's it. Also the position of the sea. I have included more sky here. The sea is more. The human is farther back. The emotion changes. It's a more morning, hopeful emotion. To me, to you it might be different, but to me, and this one is more of a evening-like emotion. The person is stagnant looking at the sea and something like that. This is a more hopeful composition, a hopeful storytelling in my opinion. Again, no human being here, plain and simple landscape. But again, the light and the sky, those are very interesting. That's something, and these elements are important, because without them, it would have been a very flat photo, very flat. These elements are complementing the colors and the structure of these, of the sea and the clouds and the sky. Now here the cloud is the main element. The sun is perfectly here. Again, the composition, very different emotion. Sort of gives off a stormy story. So it's like a storm might come and something like that. It's very different photo. So yeah, the waters are coming through, and again, look at the composition. It's going from here to here, from this side to this side, and it's coming through here. Like if it ended here, or if it was, this part was not here, the photo would have been incomplete. In this photo, can you tell me which is the most important element?
Dog.
Yes. Actually, the dog is the most important element, because without the dog, it would have been a very flat photograph again. But the dog is creating some story here, an emotion. It's giving off an emotion. This is a macro photograph, and again, it's a composition. This composition. it couldn't have been towards the left or right, then it would have been like, if I could have taken the photo more from the frontal side of the whatever it is, and or from more towards the right, from this side. But then this shape wouldn't have come in the way I wanted it. So that is very important. Well, black and white. So this, like I'll just show you the difference between the emotion conveyed by black and white photo and the color photo. Almost the same thing, but the emotions conveyed are very different. This is something I took recently. So I hope, like, can somebody who is not much fluent in photography tell me how I took this? Anybody? Okay, so this is a very basic technique. It's called slow shutter speed. So what is slow shutter speed? It's just for how much time the camera will take the photo, the take in light. If I increase that time, that is slow shutter speed, then I will get a motion, and that's what essentially is coming. This is a car, and its motion is coming. But generally, if there's a motion in a photograph, you have to keep something stagnant, and that is it. And the light, very important part of composition here. So yeah, I think that's the end of the mobile photos. Okay, so should I go to wildlife first or travel? Huh? I think the story is pretty clear here. Or the emotion. In color, this photo wouldn't have been interesting because the sky is very blunt. It was taken in the midday, okay, around 1 or 2. The sky is very, uninteresting, and it had no dimension at all, no dynamics. So the black and white gives much more impact and story here. That's why I changed it to black and white. And again, the position of this person, plain and simple composition will 1/3. Going towards the side. Actually, there are some photographs, it's possible that even if the person is going to this side, you can get the person at this 1/3. That is possible, but this was not the photo for that. You can do it in other photos. I don't know if I have any example of that, but let's see. I'll again show you the black and white version of this, and you can see the difference in the story. This is clearly giving the evening vibe. This is not giving an evening vibe. This is giving a more of a cinematic feeling, right? Black and white. Okay, this is something written in Bangla, and you can read that. Like those of you who can read Hindi, you can read it. And it's a polio, polio vaccination. So this poster is written here. This is a typical street photography. Typical street. So street photography is generally, there are exceptions. Generally, it's not very stark. It tells very subtle subtle stories. There are exceptions. You can look at the photos of Alan Scaller, but Alan Scaller's photos are mostly black and white, and he mostly focuses on. He does focus on story, but also on shapes and structures. That's a very important part of his photography. But in general street photography, this is a very important thing, that the story is subtle. These two ladies, they're sleeping. That's like in front of this poster. This poster is adding to the photo, and they're also adding to the photo. Nobody is more important than the photo. They're both creating the subject. Okay, and again, see the composition. I didn't keep the whole poster. It's not needed. It's just not needed. You can cut it here, but then the positions are sort of complementing each other. You can see sort of a diagonal. It's a plain and simple portrait that gives the emotion. I have another version of this photo. I don't have it right now. that has something that this photo is missing. Can you tell me what is missing? Somewhere it is hurting the eye. Somewhere. What is missing in this photo? Anybody? Hmm? Yeah, so the hand should have been more, right? Yeah, exactly. So I have another version. In that one, it's like much. I took it from a much like longer distance. So it has the hands, and that gives a better story. But unfortunately, right now I don't have a photo. But yeah, it's a plain and simple street again. It's taken during the Durga Puja in Kolkata. So at the back you can see a lot of people like in a sort of a festive mood. But this person is not selling, I'm sorry, carrying these wooden sticks. The emotion and the face of the person is very important. See, it's not only straightforward, blank face. Okay, and again see the shadows. It has been plopped here, not at the corner. Two very similar photos I will show you. This one and this one. Which one do you think is better? This or this? This one, right? Yeah. Because, see, this photo, first of all, the light is not that interesting. This is much more interesting light because of these elements. And in this one, the head of the person, even though it's an interesting head, but it's not really adding to the photo because you are getting distracted from the subject. Where will the viewer look? Will the viewer look at the idols or at the phone or the interesting head? So it's getting very confusing. So that's why you prefer this photo because this is less cluttered. They all form a common background. So that's why it doesn't look like a clutter. Okay. Again, street, emotion. These lights, these are very important. These writings are generally very important component in the street. And yeah,